All right, Angular developers in the building. What's up, everybody? Guess what? Guess who's back for 2026? Who is it? Is it you? Is it you? No, it's you. You're back in the building. And guess who's going to be your host for today? It'll be me, Mark, and the one and only, the legendary, the outstanding, the incomparable, the one I call friend, Jeremy Elborn. How are you doing, Jeremy?
Not bad. Pretty good. How are you?
Not bad, pretty good. Oh, I'm doing pretty good. It feels good to be back in the live stream. I forgot how much I love this. This is so much fun. Let's say, what's up? Lars always in the building. Yo, Ides in the building. Man, can I tell y'all that I really like this guy because when I went to Greece, we were at a conference at the same time, and he took me out to dinner, me and my wife, and we had like a wonderful dinner, man. That was so thoughtful, so kind. All right, what's going on? I wish I could say this, Captain Alacor, but what's up? Michael Small, the legend, another legendary person that I got to meet in person at a conference, and super thoughtful, super kind, super smart. Love it, love it. What's up, Joe in the building? Good to see you, Logan. What up? What up? What up, Logan? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, all right, all right. What's going on? Hello, 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 Glenn in the building. What's good, Glenn? What you shooting on right there? What kind of camera is that? I am a photography lover, so let me know what you're shooting on. Let's see. What up? What up? What up, man? What's going on? We got Doug in the building. What's going on? Hey, what up? What up? What up? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, let's go. Let's go. Oh, that's so nice. That's so great. Tell her I said hello. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, let's go. Okay, Glenn said I'm not playing with y'all. I'm not playing with y'all. That's what Glenn said. Because the Sony A1 Mark II is a quite fantastic camera. Glenn, I actually, so this video is coming in on a Sony FX3, and I shoot with the A7 R3. So pretty fun, pretty fun. Okay, Juan, what up? De España. Hola, hermano. What's going on? Hello from Munich. What's going on, Jim? So many people. So many people. So many people.
From so many places.
From so many places. Okay, we got to get started because we got things to do. Because Jeremy said, "What are we doing today?" And I said, "Listen, brother, we're gonna make a full game, and we're not gonna be like wasting time."
You driving?
I'm driving, but I gave you that link. See if you can
Yeah,
get me that
I
link.
keep opening the link and it says the host is offline.
Oh, let me try again. Let me make sure that I got it popping. It should say that I'm like, let me refresh or something. How do you do that? Let's see. What does this mean? Copy collaboration link. Let me try one more time because I was offline for a little bit and then I'm back online. No, it's the same link, but maybe I'll start a new session, a new sharing session. Let me try it. Let me try it one more time. Let me try it one more time. Because I'm live.
Yeah, I still got the link.
Okay. And let me know if it doesn't work for you.
All right, I'm clicking it now.
Oh, let's go. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna start tagging some of these questions. Belarus, what up? What up? What up? What up? What up?
All right, I think it's loading.
Okay.
Oh, no. The live share host is currently unavailable.
All right. I'm gonna stop it and start a new one. Because maybe it's just like acting whack, or maybe my network is acting weird. That's also a thing, maybe it's something like that. But let's just see. If this doesn't work, then you can still tell me what to do. But I thought it'd be easier that way. Is the game of the V21 release event written in Angular on the website? Yes. I believe Devin made that in Angular, which is really cool. Really, really cool. How did y'all like the V21 animated adventure? For the most part, it seemed like people who saw it enjoyed it. We did get some comments of people like, "Oh, I don't like this." I don't want to irritate people, but I'll just say people were just like, "I don't like this." So we made one that's not fun that people can watch if they want. Watching live in Nigeria, what's going on? What's up, Tayamba in the building? Hello, hello, hello. Okay, let me share my screen so we can get started because I want to share. I'll start with my window. Let's see if I can get away with the window for right now. And if it doesn't work, then we'll go all the way to a screen. Well, I'll start with the window.
See, I should have just bullied you into using WebStorm's like live collaborative editing thing instead of VS Code. I bet that would work great.
Let me tell you something. I can I can start downloading it.
No, I was like, on stream's not the time to set it up.
Okay, I can start downloading it. All right. So you should have a link or something. I sent you a link. Let's see.
All right.
You let me know if it works.
I gotta send it from one computer to another.
Oh,
so.
sure. I got you, brother. All right. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing while Jeremy is trying that out. I'm going to just tell you what I got going. I'm going to make a game using our official mascot. All right. Man, Joe said, please tell me we're playing a game. We're going to make a game. We're going to play it because I have some ideas. Let's see. Here's a good question. Are there plans for Angular Team to release official set of Claude skills? Not Claude skills, just agent skills. There you go, Jeremy. I see you at the bottom of my editor. Yep. You just joined. Okay, this is a great question, Tall Corn Games. I actually just opened a PR for a couple of skills. We got even more coming through, but these skills will be usable for Claude, be usable for Gemini CLI, any agent. They're just gonna be any agent, which is really great. Very, very good. Very, very good. Should I learn Angular if you want to have fun? Yes. Yes, you should. Let's see. My question is how effectively to do post request to RX resources. Guess what? So our what do you call that thing? That Signal one that we just released. I can't think of the name of it right now. Resource. Signal is a get only. We do not have a post there. Well, you can just use HTTP client if you want, and then convert the resource to a signal when you're done. The RX resource, you can do that.
Yeah, because like resources are mostly useful for getting the results of a request back, right? Something that you're going to show in your UI. And so if you're performing an action like a post, put, delete, etc., then you can just make an imperative API call for that, and you don't necessarily need that resource. Albeit, you still may want the status of it back. So there may still be some APIs that make sense for that in the future.
All right. And then for folks who are interested in this, and you should actually comment. I would love for you folks to comment. Michael Small actually reviewed my PR for this, left some feedback, so I'm going to adjust those today. But here's the PR for the Angular skills that we're doing. And like I said, we got a bunch of skills that are going to be coming on. One of the Angular GDEs is going to port over a bunch of skills to the repository. So it's really great. I'm really excited about skills. Very, very good. Very, very good. Okay. Let me just add this to the screen. Is this added to the stage? Now it is. All right. So here's what we're going to do, Jeremy. So I already got some stuff set up for us. We already have walking sprite animation. We got some game tiles. So we didn't want to waste any time. I asked Gemini, it was like, hey, yo, what would be something that you would imagine our character in? And then it gave me these game tiles. And I was like, I don't feel like arguing. Because just good to get it working. And then this is, these are not high def, but that's okay because I just used our official assets that were created by humans, and I asked Gemini to just make the walking animation for our purposes, right? But ideally, you could probably get somebody to do it so it could be higher res, etc. But we cannot waste any more time. So I'm here in my Gemini CLI. We do have one skill loaded.
I think you got to make it a bit bigger, Mark. Your Gemini CLI is okay, but maybe like go to a code page.
Oh, sure.
Let me see if it's big enough.
Sure. Let's do the app.ts. All right.
I guess that's okay. I can make it.
You know what's funny? I was navigating my IDE from like the preview window inside the streaming platform instead of actually looking at my IDE. All right, so we're going to start from here. All right.
You ever done this thing where you're watching a video of somebody coding and you go like kind of idly just like go to click on like a file in their IDE and you're like, oh yeah, obviously I can't do that.
Obviously not. That's pretty good. All right, let's make so. When I do AI assisted coding, I'm not really a big like send an agent to the background to just do all the work and then we come back later and be like, oh, it's all done. I like the workflow of we ask for smaller things to do and then we can verify the functionality of those things and then we continue and then we can like make things work together. Is that okay with you, Jeremy? Because that's the way I like to do it. Let's make a game today, but I can't spell, but we are going to do it step by step. I'll ask you to do something, and we'll only do that work so we can verify each phase is correct.
I need to refresh my browser tab real quick.
No problem. All right, let me make sure. See, now I got too many windows open. Okay, so here. Commerce. Okay, so people okay, so people are actually asking questions, which I love. Doug is he's in here, so that's what's up. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So while you're doing that, there's some questions in the chat about why switch from Jasmine, and then Doug, who is the TL for the Angular tooling team, is coming here and said literally the thing I was going to say before.
Say it again anyway.
Which is, it's not so much about switching away from Jasmine. Jasmine is great, but more about Karma, right? So Jasmine is a test framework, right? It gives you a way to describe tests and test blocks and assertions, but it doesn't have any sort of runner associated with it, right? Like you need something else to run your tests in the browser. And that Angular CLI has been depending on Karma for a long time, but Karma is kind of not really maintained anymore, deprecated. And so looking at alternatives, VTest is a test runner, but it is also a test framework as well. It has tightly coupled those two things. And so in going to something that was kind of more supported, you kind of get the bundle package of both test runner and test framework all together.
Okay, so what I do love about this so far, which is I'm not gonna be straight up just hyping up this work, but because I opened it in VS Code, it knows that it's in there. See this is how I like my life. Look at that. See, we can just look at this and be like, okay, what are we gonna do? Okay, game loop. Okay, request animation frame. I mean, I feel like that's okay. I don't know if I love it or hate it yet, but all right. I did say yes, you can do it. So I was just gonna hit 2. Did you know that if you're using Gemini CLI, you get a list of choices instead of having to click or do tab? You can just type the number of the choice you want. You can just do that. All right.
It's another question here about the many tests written with Jasmine. You don't have to rewrite those. So Jasmine is still it still works. It's still supported. VTest is just the default for new projects. Yeah, I think some people do kind of get the sensation of when we change the default for new projects, they feel like, oh no, the thing I'm using is out of date now, and that's not necessarily so. Sometimes we want to change the default for new projects, but the thing that that was what was the default before, the main thing before, is still supported and is not necessarily going away, and we do this a fair amount with Angular in terms of even things like zoneless, right? Zoneless is the new default now, but zones are still going to be sticking around for quite some time.
All right. When I was in graduate school, I actually made a few games, and it was a lot of work. So much work. It was a just bananas amount of work. I remember one week just waking up at 9 a.m. Well, waking up before 9 a.m., but starting class at 9 and working till 2 a.m. every day for a week to finish my final projects. It was bananas. But we had a special guest. Because I put out a call and said, hey, do you want to just come hang out? And he was like, well, I don't want to barge in. I was like, no, come hang out, because we got the one of the only, the fantastic, the TL of tooling, keeping y'all's platforms and infrastructure running.
Yeah.
Doug Parker.
Wow, thank you, Mario. That's such an introduction. And I was just kind of, stalking the chat a little bit. I was just hanging around because I was waiting for Gemini to generate some code for me, and then I was just like, I don't know, I'll just see what Mark and Jeremy are up to, and then somehow ended up in a conversation with Jasmine. So
yeah, so that's good because people have tooling questions. All right, so we're looking good so far, friends. Look at this. I mean, sure, it's fast, but okay, I'm just kind of breaking it down. So now, here's how my brain works. I don't know if it should be starting or start though, right? Like if the game started already, shouldn't it be game start and not starting here, Jeremy? Because like, what
It
does
doesn't
game starting
matter.
mean?
It doesn't matter.
It
Like
matters to
start,
me.
starting, both are good. Both are readable.
I would be the guy who insists on curly braces around the cases.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, that is like a medium spicy take.
Otherwise, you're leaking scope. You can't have like the same const named in multiple case statements unless you put the curly braces around them.
Yeah, this is one thing I do appreciate about Go as a programming language is that Go is much more strict about switch statements, and it kind of prevents the problematic patterns and like fall throughs that you can run into in other languages.
I don't know if this is spicier or less spicy. I think fall through is a terrible idea and you shouldn't do it. And I can appreciate that Go at least makes it explicit, and there's like a fall through keyword, which is better than having to put break everywhere. I just wouldn't have it at all. I would just say you can't do it.
Yeah. This is the ever-present tension in, I think, all software design, right? Is like power and flexibility versus safety and security. Like not necessarily like security in a sense of like vulnerability security, but like not screwing up.
Tricky to find that balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's some conversation about this. Even recently, we added support for arrow functions in Angular templates, which I was very excited about. This was a feature request I opened in 2016, I think, and I've wanted it forever. And finally, we added it in the last couple of releases, thanks to Christian on the Angular team, just constantly shipping features. And some people are immediately just like, oh no, how dare you put logic in the template? And it's like, it's this tension between like, hey, in situations when you want like a really simple map function or like a key lookup function, right? Like, yeah, like that, I wouldn't call that like logic in the template, right? It's more, like something that is just like a simple like map to a property or something that is a simple filter. Like, I think that's perfectly reasonable as like view logic in your template. But yeah, absolutely, people can abuse this and do problematic things with it. But is it better to have it or to not in the framework? And ultimately, we decided it's better to have it. But there is that tension.
Here's a great question. Which VS Code theme is that? I'm going to give you a little bit of a soapbox moment, but I'm going to tell you what it is. It is high contrast. Once I was teaching at a university, I had a student that I was like, hey, could you go to the line where the error is showing? It's a red squiggly line. He said, what red squiggly line? I'm like, the one right there on line 12. He's like, what red squiggly line? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's right there. He was colorblind. And ever since that day, I have always promised that I will use a high contrast screen. So that way, everyone who sees my screen can parse it. That's why I use high contrast, and this is VS Code high contrast.
Yeah, I picked up that same habit from you, Mark, where anytime I'm recording a video or something, I always switch into high contrast and zoom in to try to get something that looks like this. It really helps for accessibility.
That's exactly right.
That's a good practice. You should write a blog post about it, Mark.
I am. You know what? I need to learn how to write. I'm not a good writer. I need to learn how to write. And so, all right. Let's see. There's some questions. I've been tagging questions. If you all want to keep answering questions, that's good.
You keep coding. I'll answer some questions.
All right. Let's see.
Get settled in. So this question here. What is the way to use external libraries like Kendo UI with Signal Forms today? And so Signal Forms are still in either developer preview or experimental. I forget which, but they're still not quite stable yet. And one of the features that's still actively in progress is the like interoperability with the kind of older reactive and like template-driven forms. And so team Kirill and Miles and Leon are still like hard at work on that, and Alex as well, right? Like they're still like actively working on this, and that should be along in the not too distant future of like really smooth, streamlined integration with previous form systems so that any existing controls out there will work with it. So stay tuned and you'll hear more. And then we have a question. Do I prefer arrow functions in the template or TS file? And the answer is it depends, right? This is a little bit of a judgment call because what I was saying earlier, right? It really depends on how complex of a function it is. And so, an example that comes to mind for me is like the Angular material autocomplete, Mat autocomplete. It has a input on the autocomplete. I think it's called like display with or display as. And so you're taking your like data item and you're saying like, okay, what from this data item do I want to pluck out and show in my my autocomplete? And for that, it's usually a like really straightforward mapping, right? So you're like mapping the item to some property on that item to display. And in cases like that, like absolutely arrow function in the template. Like it's simpler and the logic is close to where you're using it as part of your display logic. If you were going to be doing some sort of complex filtering or transformation, probably do that in your like TypeScript file. It's like it looks a little bit messy to do it in the template, I think. And I think that's true for like genuinely like any templating language, right? Whether it's like JSX or TSX or Svelte's authoring format. You want to like ultimately like have your logic where it makes sense to have it clean and not too much stuff all in your template. And then there's another question about arrow functions and templates. Do arrow functions work? So output, like all event handlers, whether they're native events or Angular outputs, they are all statements. So when you have like a click handler, the right-hand side of that, you are not like in JSX passing a function that is going to be invoked. You are instead basically expressing the body of a function.
What's up, Danny Thompson in the building? What's up, man? All right, Jeremy.
And so for arrow functions and templates, you wouldn't use an arrow function as like the right-hand side of an event handler, like because it's a statement, and so it wouldn't actually run. But you could use an arrow function within that statement if you wanted to pass it as an argument or something like that.
All right. Now, check this out, friends. I have started some, I've asked our coding agent to help with a lot of things, but I'm trying to start small so that way it just doesn't get overwhelming. So right now we got our states, we got our initialization and the game state starting, and I've just asked it to set up the canvas and set up the keyboard controls so that way we can go from one state to the next. Because the next thing we want to do is get our character on the screen and then walking across. Again, this just may be me being an old, cranky old man, but I like this flow of like agentic coding where I'm like, hey, look, we're going to do things slow and steady because it's still faster than what I would have typed. So like we're still getting a lot of speed, right? Like, at least that's what I think. This is what I think.
Oh, real quick, Michael Small points out that the arrow functions and templates is not actually out in stable yet. It's only in the next version so far. Yeah. I forgot that 21.2 isn't out yet.
That's right.
So soon.
Get ahead of yourself, Jeremy.
I kind of lose track. I just know when like, the PR landed. So it's like, it's done. And I kind of forget that there's a little bit of time that has to pass before it gets out into the public stable release.
I'm so frustrated. Doug, this is the thing that I actually want to talk to you about at some point. Our starting HTML and app.html, when you generate a project, it has so much SVG code and other things in it that it chokes up the agent sometimes when they go in to like clear it out to make new changes. They just like give up. So I wonder if we can do a version of this that doesn't have like the other stuff in it. You know what I mean?
We've talked several times before about trying to simplify the thing that ng-new generates.
Yeah.
The thing that always bothered me is that we shove everything in the template file, including like the style and CSS, and like that's typically not how you write your actual Angular code. So it's kind of misleading that we do it there, and that always bothered me to a certain extent. And maybe we need to readjust that. I remember there was some discussion on like I don't know if we ever did it for ng-new -- single file component or something where it would just give you the TS and then like give you like an inline template and inline CSS. which would at least be a lot more approachable in that context. But
Yeah.
then again, you're training the AI to like, oh, you want to do things inline, which you may or may not want. And so like there's a lot of balance there, unfortunately.
Yeah. What's up, Mike? Wonderful community member, GDE podcast host in the building. What's good? Good to see you.
Yeah, Mike.
All right, Jeremy, did you see what I did something for you specifically in this case, Jeremy?
What did you do for me?
I specifically used section and not article because I care about you.
Yeah.
Specifically. All right, here we go. So I want to see this thing. All right, I'm going to start the app.
I think you mean don't try to do it for me. Otherwise you're...
Oh, yeah. No, because these things, the reason I don't like when Gemini CLI runs our app is because then it blocks on the process, right? And I don't like that.
You need to try out the CLI MCP driver that we've been, I think it's in minor. I think it's in 21.1.
So this sounds like the next stream, we're going to have you on here walking us through that stuff. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're gonna do.
Making more work for myself here.
Yep, that's what we're gonna do. So now, you friends, we got a bunch of people. You know what? And also this year, I'm gonna have more guests on the stream, so it should be pretty fun. Okay, yes, you can know what I'm doing.
Yes, yes, Mark.
I was gonna say you can know what I'm doing. Work.
Got to accept those analytics.
All right. Can I do the simple web browser here?
Here,
Simple.
I'm gonna clean up your. Can I forget I'm like in this.
Yeah, go ahead, fix it up.
I'm really good at it. I'm gonna delete your router outlet import. There you go. I'm helping.
Oh man. Oh, let's go. Okay, let's see. Do. Okay, so one window. Okay, go away.
All right,
Let
again,
me use delete and import he needs and then put on your best Ralph Wiggum impression.
Oh, get ready. What does that even mean? Why is it so big? I can't see anything. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out for a second, friends at home, just so we can see. Okay, I'm going to hit space, enter. What does it do? You got to let me see. This is why I feel like you got to get involved, and it's okay. And it's okay to get involved because what has happened here? What has happened here? Nobody knows. That's the problem. So that's literally the problem. Let me hide this. I can't see anything. Hide. Okay. Looks good, but I'm sad. There's nothing to alert players as how to start the game. We need a message.
Does saying you're sad get you better results?
No. I'm just being silly.
We should evaluate that in our CodeGen scorer. It's like, see if we get better results in generated code if you express your emotions along.
That's right. Well, I already told us that Doug was disappointed a couple of times, and then that Doug was happy. So let's see if it works. There's no we need a message.
Now the AI is just going to think of me as some like emotional, over the top TL that can't make up his mind and so accurate. Yeah.
Do those of you in the chat, do you know about Web CodeGen Scorer? If not, you should go check it out. It's a tool that our team built, Angular team built, that we use it to measure the effectiveness of different prompting and other techniques to influence code generation, and score the output based on whether it builds, whether there's runtime errors, how good it looks, whether there's any accessibility or performance issues, and so on. And then we use that to kind of iterate on our prompts and iterate on the framework itself to get better results from LLM code generation. And it's very cool. You can use it for your own custom prompts and add your own custom checks to it as well.
Okay. All right, friends, we got it. So that looks good. Okay, so I want do both messages. I like the get ready. See, this is okay though.
All right, we got a question for Doug here. Will Angular DevKit build Angular get a builder for VTest, or is Angular build the way to go in the future?
So I think there's only a builder in Angular build. You wouldn't really need one in Angular DevKit. The the reason for the separate package is because Angular Dev Kit Build Angular has a dependency on Webpack and a lot of the infrastructure that comes with that. So it includes the builders like Browser Builder that rely on Webpack. But some of the newer stuff like Application Builder, which is using ESBuild, like vtest, that stuff doesn't have that dependency. So we kind of shove that into Angular Build. We made some aliases in DevKit Build Angular. I don't know if one exists for vtest. I might be wrong about that. But if it does exist, it's just an alias of Angular Build. So there really isn't that much benefit to having it in there. So in general, you'd want to, if you need Webpack and you're using one of those builders, then you're kind of in the Angular Dev Kit Build Angular world. That also includes Karma as well. But in general, if you're moving off of that and you're using Application Builder, you're using vtest, then you don't need Webpack. We can just get that out of your dependency tree. So you want to be using Angular Build for that. And so that's what our schematics will migrate you to.
All right, excellent. Did you all go through the questions that I starred already?
Oh, I didn't realize you were starring questions.
Yeah, I put some in there.
Let's see. Here's a good one. I didn't see this one earlier. Basically, what are the disadvantages of effect? And this is a great question because effect is really something that is a little bit tricky to use correctly. And so the advice that the Angular team has is effect should always be the last thing that you reach for. And by that, it's more anytime you can use computed, or you can use link signal, or you can use resource, always reach for one of those before you reach for effect. And if you ever find yourself using an effect that is taking the value from one signal and writing it into another signal, that's like a red flag that something has gone wrong and you should just be using a computed, and likely that the state that you're working with should be kind of refactored to be higher up in your data hierarchy. Effect can be tricky because it's a little bit harder to reason about than the kind of computed or resource style APIs. And you only really want to use it if you need to call some inherently imperative API. And so one example that we always use for this is local storage. If you want to take some value and write it into local storage whenever it changes, then yes, an effect is good for that because the only API you have to write into local storage is an imperative API, and so you need to create an effect to call it. Another usage for effect is if you need to, for some reason, connect two different signal or reactivity systems. And so let's say purely hypothetically, I don't think anybody should actually do this, but hypothetically, if you were using Angular and Vue on the same page, and you had an Angular signal and you wanted to copy that value over to a Vue signal and keep those linked, then you can use an effect for that. So you would create an effect that takes the Angular value and writes it into the Vue one. So you're bridging these two separate systems that don't normally have a way to connect their reactivity graphs. And I believe we do have some updated documentation on angular.dev that talks about the best practices for using effect. So definitely go check that out.
I can add that we've done this a couple times in DevTools for merging with Dagger D3 is how we deal with like the nice graphs that we generate for the injection, like your injection tree or the signal graph. And so that's kind of a case where like we need to sort of eject from sort of our reactivity system to get into that Dagger D3 system. And to start working with that a little bit more imperatively. So that's one case as well that we need to like use effects to make that happen. But I do agree in general with Jeremy that like if there are other things like a computed or a link signal, other primitives, you probably want to use those directly. But every now and then you kind of need a way to eject from the reactivity graph and start doing something else. And that's where you kind of end up in a world where you need to start reaching for effects.
All right, jumping in real quick, I'll say this. Hello, welcome to the stream. Would work with Clyde. Good. Use the tool that works best for you. Seriously, do the best strain that works with you. Jeremy, is this true?
Is this last one? Yeah, I wasn't going to mention this until the end of the stream. But yeah, this is going to be my last stream. I am going to be leaving Google in a couple of weeks, and so I don't want to use up too much of this time for personal stuff. But we'll talk more about it at the end.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, here's a question. Are we not wasting tokens if we use a lot of emotional expression? Seems like a waste of tokens. It is a waste of tokens if you are paying for your tokens. Like, don't do this, right? Like, be efficient. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just being silly.
If you're a Google employee and you don't care about using the Gemini tokens.
Right. I'm just using, I'm just being silly, but I'm trying. Okay. And I guess this is being a little Westwood. I'll stop because that's a good point, Lars. Because somebody needs that compute, right? So I don't want to be like too silly.
I have heard, I've seen stats. I don't have anything offhand to mention, so hopefully I'm not just spreading misinformation here. But I have seen stats that the AI does tend to perform better in certain circumstances if you put things like you must absolutely do this or you will be shut down and die.
Oh my gosh.
Just being like overly exaggerated, and that it can help it follow instructions in certain circumstances. I don't know how universal that is, but at least is a thing that could hypothetically, maybe that token use is worth it sometimes. I don't know.
Which software am I using? Visual Studio Code with the high contrast, and then I'm using Gemini CLI in the console area. And then is Gemini CLI free? We have a no cost. There's a way to use it at no cost to start with, but then of course you can always link your AI account, your Google AI account to it and get an AI key. I don't know what the no cost usage numbers are, like how many tokens you get for no cost, but there is a way to start at no cost with Gemini CLI, and it's open source if you want to try to help improve it. You did not disturb me. Okay. I'm not going to answer questions. Let me get back to this crafting this beautiful game.
Yeah, you keep doing that. We got a question here. Zoneless by default. So new applications don't include Zone.js out of the box. Are we ready to manage change detection purely based on signals and mark for check? Generally, you shouldn't even really need mark for check almost any of the time if you are consistently using signals. And so again, this is the default for new applications, new projects. And for those new projects, if you are consistently using signals for all of the dynamic state that is expressed in your template, in your UI, then you should generally never really have to think about change detection, never have to think about mark for check. As long as you are writing to signals, then that is going to drive change detection and everything will just work. And you also do want to make sure you are using on push everywhere as well. We actually, I don't know, this is not an announcement, but also we in the last week had a conversation about changing the default change detection strategy to on push. And I think things are going to start moving in that direction in the not too distant future.
We published an RFC for this, Jeremy.
Yeah. Oh, did we publish it already?
Yeah, we published RFC.
I'll put a link. I just brought it up as a link in there.
You didn't spill any beans, Jeremy. No beans were spilled. It's all good. The trepidation there was funny. Like, I don't want to make an announcement. No, we already announced we're doing that. You're all good.
Okay. Yes. I didn't know you published it already.
Yeah, no, you're all good. Hey, I want to address this good comment. Gemini made me spend a lot of tokens trying to convince it that components are standalone by default. Angular 21 just saying still want to add standalone flat smart components. Okay. That is a very good point, Gabriel de los Rios. Bienvenido aquí. Thank you for coming. One of the things that we're doing is our skills are going to help with this. Our skills are going to totally help with this. And then it'll just, things will be better. So we have a PR open. We're going to hopefully get it merged by early next week. And then skills will help with these types of things. Because as on push changes, right, we'll make sure that the skills and the context files are updated so that way agents know, so you don't have to spend those tokens. All right, back to the game. Are we good? Jeremy, we got a lot of stuff going on here, brother. It's just, we're cooking.
Yeah. You got a lot of code in there.
I don't know what to do. Okay, so let's... Okay, I'm going to try to not waste so many tokens. Game world time. So in Gemini CLI, you can do this cool thing where you can reference an actual file. So I have my world tiles here, so it knows which file I'm talking about in my workspace. Yeah, to create a starter, create a floor.
All right, while that's going, I also want to highlight this one from Michael Small. Link Signal cleaned up so many effects that I had made before Link Signal existed. Yes, and in fact, the whole idea of linked signal came about because some folks on the Angular team went and got their hands dirty in the Google Fonts code base. So Google Fonts is an Angular app, and the team went and tried to move Google Fonts over to using signals for most of the application. And they kept running into the same pattern over and over again of like, well, I have this local state where it is kind of computed, but I need to be able to write it locally as well. And it was so common across the code base that it led to the creation of Link Signal. And so this is a nice instance of like where it really is helpful, especially for like framework library authors, to go and like actually get your hands dirty building stuff and like real application code and figure out what the kind of usage patterns are. And I'm that's one of the things I'm proud that the team managed to do and like figure out. Link Signal and resource as well came about from that work in the Google Fonts code base.
Okay, Jeremy, this is a question for Doug.
Oh, you want me to read it? Can you use MCP as well with Gemini?
Yeah, you can couple that. I think it's tells it. Yeah, so in Gemini CLI does support MCP. There's a config file. I forget if we generate that for you or not. I need to double check. So where we landed at that. But yeah, you can certainly configure that to run. It's just ng MCP is ultimately the command that is actually executing. It'll communicate with that loads best practices. We'll also generate the best practices file for you in ng-new, or you can do ng generate ai-config, I think is the line. So you can get like agents.md and gemini.md independent of the MCP server, and then that'll kind of configure a lot of Angular best practices, hopefully cover things like, standalone is true by default now, and you don't need to set that, and help guide the AI in that direction. So all of that should work pretty much out of the box. Definitely recommend trying that out as you explore more with AI in the future.
All right, we're stuck. How can I describe to the agent that I wanted to use this top row for floor tiles and not what it did?
Oh.
I mean, I can see sprites there,
Yeah, it did something, right? So it's not completely wrong, but this is like, I always tell people, like when you're using AI tooling, the reason that you're not going away as an engineer is because you know what is right and what's wrong. You know what to do. And I keep telling people that, like, look at this. I'm not saying that the Gemini is wrong. I just don't know. Okay, I'm going to try what you said there. I'm going to just say, use the top row as floor sprites. I'm going to try it. Let's see. Because what it did, I do not like. And actually, let's just look at how it's being loaded. And then maybe we can just fix that code ourselves, right? Like that was the point of doing this like on our own or in like phases instead of just taking big chunks of code. Okay, so let's figure out. So this is the game loop. All right, draw platforms. Boom, look at that. See, I know what to do. I know where to go. This is the point. Okay, all right. Let's see, draw image. Okay, the tile set. Okay, how do you know what this is? How do you know what this is? Is this already set someplace? Where's my platforms? Hold on. Where are those initial values? Oh, okay.
Maybe tweak those numbers or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't start. I mean, I wouldn't have put the code like this, like here. But okay, because this is like initializing the static. I mean, like I don't know. This is initializing this. I guess if you were to restart the loop, you start here. Anyway, so the floor, that's the position. Are these just the... Oh, okay, here we go. But it doesn't say which asset to use for the floor, though. Oh, that's this thing right here, the tile. So this is our thing we got to adjust.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the right answer is here. I can't. I'm just going to change it.
You just lower the height by like double the height or something.
Yeah, so I'm going to see. So X, Y. So with height, let's do. So happens you do 100. What does that give you? Okay, that doesn't really tell me anything. 200. Let's see. Oh, that's the drawing height. That's how high. Oh, I see how it did it now. Okay, that's just a draw. So like this is 50 pixels. But
So
I'm trying to
that's
figure
not
out
tile,
where to
maybe?
start from. What's that, Doug?
Is it the one that's not tile, maybe?
One that's not tile. This one.
Yeah, maybe that height.
Sure, let's see what happens.
Oh.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm like, oh, what the hell this thing did? Okay, that's weird. Why is it doing it that way?
Oh, I think you want platforms. Floor is at the bottom. The platforms are in the air, probably.
Yeah, but I want to fix the platforms because the platforms have like
I
a
see.
top. So
Okay,
here,
never mind.
let's have a look at it together and let's fix it. See, the platforms have a top edge. You see,
Yeah.
with that top edge is being occluded. Yeah. Yeah, so I want to fix that top edge. So let's fix it.
All right. While you're doing that, I'm going to answer
Yeah.
some more questions.
Well, Doug is helping me with this, so this is cool. All right, so
there's a question here. Are there going to be scripts to update field and on push? So for on push, anything, if there's like any sort of like breaking change or migration, like there will be like ng update scripts or migrations to deal with that. For field, I'm not sure because Forms was pre-release and we don't always do migration scripts when we make changes in things that are pre-release. But sometimes we have if it was like widely used enough. So I don't have an answer for this. I would guess probably not because the amount of time between the initial release and the change was relatively small. And then there's a comment here. I'm not 100% sure I know what you mean with like take a hit from, or maybe a hint from the AI, make standalone true configurable. I wanted to highlight this because this is something that actually gets something like this gets suggested for Angular a lot, for things like change detection strategy and default. It's like, hey, just make the default configurable, right? Like let me have like in my angular.json a setting that like lets me change the default for this. And people suggest that a lot, and it's not something that's actually really possible for the constraints that we're trying to enforce in Angular. And the reason for that is because libraries exist. And so if you have any sort of third-party library you're bringing in from Node modules, you can't change whether or not those are standalone or change their default like change detection strategy because they're written with certain assumptions about how that component is going to work. And so that is one part of it. And then secondly, like even if you're not thinking about third-party libraries, it's still for kind of monorepo use cases, right? Like you need to have like somewhat composable, buildable units of code across your code base. And that means like you don't want to do a global compilation as your app gets larger and larger, because then your build is just going to be like a slow nightmare. Okay. So you need to be able to do kind of more incremental, smaller units of compilation. And that means you have to be able to compile parts of your code without compiling the whole thing. And if you only had one global setting, then you would need to like be aware of that like global setting in like every compilation unit, which can be a problem. I don't know, Doug, if you want to have anything to comment on that as well.
Yeah, the two things I'd add, like one of those steps on the compilation side is just tests, right? If you're running tests and those tests are like isolated on the libraries or decoupled from like wherever in the main app that you're setting that default, then you need to duplicate that configuration over there for all of them. And managing that gets quite complicated. And then separately, I would say that even independent from like the build optimization perspective is just like developer understanding. You want to be able to look at a component and have a general idea of what it's going to do. But if you instead have to say like, oh, well, will this cause it to reload? I don't know. I need to look in a completely different file and figure out what the default change detection setting is. It makes that a lot harder to reason about, especially if you have some, magic around the way that you load that change detection setting. So just like locality of these kinds of settings makes a lot of sense when it comes to just making sure that developers understand what it is they're working with, on top of a lot of the like build complexities that come with that.
All right, I figured out some of the things that I'm looking for. I had to go into the sprite sheet and look at the mapping myself because I don't know. I just didn't seem like the right thing to do to keep like querying, against the agent. And I know we're talking about like wasting tokens versus like just doing it and figuring it out. Again, keep trying to tell people, knowing what to do is still magic. So now this is better, right? Like it's not just random pieces. We got one platform. I don't care about the top platform. I'll get back to that. I just want the floor to be there. I got too ambitious. So let's see. So now our floor is there. So let's make sure we got the whole floor. So starting X, I think this is starting X, starting Y, maybe. Is that what it is? And this is width and height of the thing. So if we do that, if we look at here, what do we want to do? Is that the full sprite sheet there? I mean the full tile? What the heck? So yeah, that looks right. Oh, I gotta get the rest of that curve in there. See, that's not there. That rounded curve. So that's the left tile. See, I would, and Jeremy and Doug, I would want to hear your feedback. I would actually predefine which tile is which by the coordinates. So the way I could know which one I was always referencing. So we don't have to do this again. Like you figure it out once. That's not in here though. You see what I'm saying? Like that's not in here. So Mark knows something.
Yeah, I definitely want to like factor that out into some like, a map of tiles.
Yeah, that's
where it is in source code, but doesn't know where it's being rendered. And then separately, you'd have a way to draw that tile at a specific location.
Right. But tile. Let's see. I want to just say like I'm gonna start with left tile just for a second, and then we can always make my code better here. Like I'm fine with that, but just let me get my stove together and cook for a second because I want to get my left tile working, so I can put a bunch of these. So if you take a tile, which is fine, I'm fine with that. You take this, and then we put left tile. Yeah, like that. Relax. I'm trying to form a neighborhood band called Those Dads Over There, and we're a metal band. And and we want to talk about things that dads go through, like getting your kids to do their homework, brushing your teeth.
Brush your teeth.
Take out garbage.
Take out the garbage. No.
You know what I mean? Like that. Like,
don't make me ask you again. Oh.
I feel like that would work on child me. I'd be terrified.
All right. Okay, so that's pretty good. Somebody said AI is a joke. Listen, AI does do some funny things. I think that's Joe. I can't fully see your name because it's across the room. My glasses ain't working today. But Joe, look, I think that once we set our expectations appropriately for what AI can do, there's a show called The Pit that I actually really like. And they're trying to do some AI stuff in the show. And then the AI writes down the wrong medication for a patient. And the person pitching the AI says something that I actually love. It says AI, or that they say AI is excellent, not perfect. You are still important. And I'm like, yes, perfect. That's exactly the right framing. It's excellent and perfect. Okay. All right. I got to keep going because we're going to run out of time for me telling too many stories. All right. It's supposed to be faster this time, Jeremy. And what am I doing? Okay, so we got our tile. All right, fine. Should I just do a bunch of left tiles, like side to side for now, just to save some time? Cool. Or Jeremy, you're supposed to be coding with me anyway. What happened to that?
I'm too busy answering questions.
That is true. So we can take this one, bring it back to the mix, starting a little bit over, and then we'll say this is a left tile. Yeah,
I do see a good question here. I don't know how you're pinning questions or if I even have access to do that.
Yeah, you gotta have a StreamYard hooked up to the Angular account.
But there's one question here on now that Zone.js is gone, what's the magic behind clicks in component change detection?
Mhm.
Like every component has some event listener for some events for it to work. Maybe Jeremy knows this better than I do, but I feel like the way that I tend to think of it, at least, is that all the signals, really signals, are the magic. And that I tend to think of it as any signal that gets referenced in a template kind of gets wrapped in an effect. I sort of think of a magic effect that has all of the signals that are in this template. And then when any of those change, it triggers this effect, and that effect causes the component to run change detection and re-render. I imagine in practice, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I don't think it's quite that simple, but at least that's my mental model for it and how I tend to think of it. And so as long as your change is in a signal and it's ultimately referenced in the template, then you don't need to worry about mark for check. You don't need to worry about Zone.js doing any kind of magic under the hood because signals propagates that information out.
Yeah. So that is in theory correct. In reality, Angular does currently, I believe, still mark dirty on events that it knows about, right? So if you register a click handler through Angular, even if no signals are modified, I believe it still calls mark dirty. And we had some conversations about this. I'm looking back through the framework meeting notes, and so back. Oh boy, this is way back in, I think, August.
I think I do remember some vague conversation. Now that you mention this, that does sound familiar.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, because it's been a while since we talked about this, and back in August, Andrew Scott was proposing changing this and saying let's make it so that event listeners don't do this, and it is only signal writes. And we got into a conversation about breaking changes and the concern that it would be too breaking to do this. And so we never, I don't remember if we actually decided anything here. I think there was some proposals around, oh, yes, we did make a decision. Here it is. This is why, pro tip, whenever you have meetings, always write your decisions in the meeting note in bold. This is my number one meeting hot tip, is just always write down the decisions in the meeting note, all caps, decisions in bold, and what you did.
That is the single most important thing you have said this whole stream.
Yes. And so here I just was able to go back through the notes from last August and find this decision. And so the options we were considering were adding a new property to the component decorator to control this behavior, events mark dirty or something like that. Adding a new change detection strategy, so something on push strict or on push no events or something like that. To add a new syntax to event bindings themselves, so you would do click, no mark or something like that, or the inverse where you change the default, and then it's okay, well then they have click and click with mark, not this mark, but mark 30. And then the ultimate option 4, which we decided to do, was to do nothing and just leave it the way it is, and wait until we have some sort of other larger change and fold it into that. And so one of the ideas we've talked about in the past is having something like a signals true component that enforces everything is using signals. And if we get to a point where we introduce something like that, we would include this behavior change in there as well.
Okay, wait, that's a great point. But I also got to say, what's up, Esther in the building? Welcome back, legendary Angular community member. Good to see you. Way to be in the building. Somebody said, couldn't I just tell the AI to do what I wanted? Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't like the toil of going back and forth of saying a whole bunch of stuff just to get it to maybe do what I want or not. So sometimes I do just like to go in and figure it out. What is it trying to do? And edit the code. You know what I mean? Just edit the code and not be, because then if something breaks down long term, that's what I'm so worried about this. I'm so worried about this for full code where no one ever looks at it, that when it breaks down and it's hard to describe what's broken or if not easily fixed, never knowing what went into it. You know what I mean? That is a concern of mine. I don't want to be in that position. I want to kind of know what's happening still. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. Not the opinion of Google or my colleagues. Just Mark's opinion.
We got Ollie jumping in, trying to make sure he understands Mark's opinion.
I like that energy.
Yeah. Also, this is true. When you call Mark for check, Mark has to go personally check your entire components tree.
Every time. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Let's see. I actually did this. I honestly did this. I tried to do it in preview, and it did not return the pixel coordinates, and it really annoyed me. Okay, I'm too distracted right now. No one else asked me any more questions. I have to keep going. Before Jeremy's last stream, we got to get Angie walking across the screen. Who put these silly things? I did not say to put those back in there.
Mother funner.
Look at this. It just did what it wanted to do. I did not. I'm going to just delete this code because I didn't tell you to do this. Oh, wait. Isn't that going to break my code? No. Yes, maybe. I said no.
Doug, what's your cat's name?
This is Ollie. And he is a little overweight. The vet's been telling us to try to work on that, but
Oh my God.
not too bad. He's like 10-ish pounds, but I'm sure.
Did you see what happened?
Dog, I'm sure he's used to a lot heavier than this.
Did you see what happened? It undid my code. It literally undid my code where I separated the block and everything. It undid all of that. How dare you? How dare you?
It's where you say like delete all the unnecessary code, and then it deletes all the code you wrote, and then you're
Yeah.
just conscious.
Man, that's so whack. How dare you? Well, I'm not going to have to work with you.
All right. So if folks have more questions, feel free to keep dropping in the chat. I think I'm like scrolling back through the chat. I think I've gotten most of the questions.
Oh, I think I remember one that I don't think we responded to is about at the beginning we were talking about like Jasmine and VTest and that sort of thing, and how some of the syntax has changed in a way that can be kind of breaking. We do have an experiment. I forget if it's experimental development preview, but we have some early access kind of API for schematic for migrating your existing Karma Jasmine tests over to VTest. So it's not quite stable yet. We're still kind of working out some of the kinks, but we're looking forward to feedback on that of things where it struggles. So we would recommend if you're interested, you can try that out and see how well it migrates your tests. Also, I think somebody had mentioned that like AI can probably help with some of this. It's kind of a thing that these are pretty well understood APIs, and AI can do a lot of that.
Yeah. I was reading a case study. I forget which company. It might have been like Airbnb, where they did an LLM focused migration of like from one test framework to another and found that to be really effective. And that kind of matches my experience as well. Like, there's some things LLMs are good at and some that they're less good at. And like kind of migrating between two well-known APIs or even like two well-known programming languages is something that they tend to be reasonably good at and can give you a pretty decent speed up if you are, you still need a human to drive and fix things, right? They're still going to mess up and hallucinate from time to time, but they will ultimately like save you time in the long run over enough different changes.
Yeah. I think on the Jasmine and VTest thing as well, in that VTest kind of like if you plot out the like family tree of these test frameworks, Jasmine is kind of up at the top there, but then that sort of informed what became Jest. Jest sort of had like Jasmine compatibility, and then VTest came around and had Jest compatibility. And so the APIs are broadly pretty similar. There certainly are differences, right? It doesn't have a Jasmine global; it has the Vi global, but a lot of what it is pretty similar. So a lot of the changes are just sort of like minor syntactic things, or occasionally you end up with like VTest mocks work differently, but they still have spies in the traditional Jasmine sense. So it is very much something that I think AI could do a pretty good job. We're trying not to rely on that for the schematics that we create, but it's something that gets added on top. And all these being really difficult, so you need to get off my lap now. We have not trimmed your nails recently in this show.
So there's another question. I realized I missed this one earlier. I had meant to comment on it. And so question about material theming. It seems like there's now a lot of theme variables or component style that aren't set by default. And I seeing this, I suspect that this is actually like something is misconfigured in your app, because if you are calling the like appropriate setup APIs, that like there's some Sass mixins that should set all of those CSS variables. And so if they're not set, you might be missing some Sass mixins, or you might be missing an import. I don't remember the specifics of the API off the top of my head. Andrew Seguin did a lot of work on this in 2025. And so there were some changes. And so definitely go check out the most up-to-date documentation there and make sure your, whatever your theme setup is using the most recent set of things. And then another question here. We've mentioned before that we are working on better signal support in router, but do we have any sort of ETA on that? And no, at this moment, we don't have an ETA on that. It is still something that is floating near the relatively top part of the backlog, but it's not something that we have a specific time frame for. Oh boy, this is a funny question here. Can we have Dart support in Angular or something so that we can reuse code with Flutter? No, unfortunately, that I don't see ever happening. But this is a kind of a funny question, because originally when Angular version 2 was being developed, it was developed for TypeScript and Dart at the same time. And so there was one code base that was authored in TypeScript, and then there was a tool that some folks on the team put together called TS to Dart that transpiled the code into Dart and then augmented it with some additional Dart facades and things like that to make it work in Dart as well. And shortly after the V2 release, the TypeScript version and the Dart version were permanently forked from each other. And kind of the Dart organization inside of Google took ownership of that Dart version, and the Angular team took ownership of the TypeScript version. And they kind of just went in their own separate paths. And for a while, that Dart version was open source, but it was eventually it kept being developed inside of Google, but eventually they stopped developing it in open source because it just wasn't really seeing that much adoption. And the overhead of working on it in open source was kind of relatively high compared to any value it was providing for the ecosystem. And so they switched to just keeping it as an internal Google thing. And at this point, it wouldn't really make sense to try to add support for that, because it actually was in supporting both programming languages, it actually put a lot of limitations and kind of some negative consequences on the TypeScript implementation. Because when you target multiple languages like that, you were only really able to take advantage of the set of language features that are supported in both. And it also requires a degree of abstraction that can make things more complicated. And so one of the things you might notice about Angular that's a little bit odd is that there's a lot of APIs that use null as a default value instead of undefined, where undefined would be the more idiomatic thing to do. And the reason for that is because of Dart. Dart doesn't have a concept of undefined. It only has a concept of null. And so at the time the code was written to support both of these programming languages, all of the unset values had to be null so they can work in both TypeScript and Dart. That is why element ref exists, and why you can't just directly inject a HTML element or something like that, is because Dart at the time had an entirely different set of APIs for DOM. And so there needed to be this level of abstraction around the element. And it's also why I think this is a little bit better now. I think it's generic now, but for a long time, the native element property of element ref was just typed as any, because there was no one kind of common type that was, there's no common interface that would have made sense between both TypeScript and Dart. And so it was just typed as any. And so I could probably think of more if I spend more time thinking about it, but there were actually a lot of things in Angular that were influenced that made it like less idiomatic TypeScript and less like idiomatic web ecosystem by trying to support both of these at the same time. All that said, WebAssembly is coming a long way, and the Dart team is really focused on the WebAssembly story for Dart and making that really excellent, having small binary sizes and having it well optimized. And so if you are looking to share code in Dart across with a web application, WebAssembly might not be a bad option depending on your use case, and it's something to definitely check out.
One other thing to remember, there's also the option for interop between Dart apps and Angular apps. The reason I know this because I worked on it with one of the Dart engineers, and we talked about it at Google I/O on the dev keynote. So it is possible to do this thing in the repo. If you find that, I think it was 2024 Google I/O dev keynote. If you find the keynote, you'll also find like links from that time of the repo of how we showed how you can interop between the two. It's not sophisticated, but it's possible. My game is whack, and I'm trying to fix it.
So there's another thing I wanna highlight here. Is there's some conversation in the chat about customizing Angular material and places where it's difficult to customize, and hopefully, yes, the move over to tokens and CSS variables. I have heard like the intent of that was to make it a little bit easier to customize, and I have heard that in many ways it does, but ultimately, Angular Material is still a material design component library, and material design is somewhat opinionated about certain things that are not customizable. And so this is why one of the focuses of the team lately has been on Angular Aria. And so if you go to angular.dev, you can learn more about this. I'm not going to share a screen and take over Mark's code, but
you can if you want to, because I can't figure out how to get my player to work.
You keep going, but it's easy to find on angular.dev. There is a new, I believe, developer preview package that we released not too long ago called Angular Aria, which is a set of headless component interaction patterns that you can use to build your own custom UI widgets, where we give you the building blocks that handle all of the user interactivity and the hard parts of getting kind of the accessibility state correct out of the box. And so it has support for, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, a dozen interaction patterns like tree and grid and combo box and menu out of the box. So you can get all of the interactions for those things like keyboard interaction and like different states. It's all like working with signals by default. Like this is fully built on signals from the ground up. And you bring your own templates and your own styles to those, so you can get like the full extent of customization with the minimal amount of code. So definitely go check those out. And if you have feedback for the team, they are still in developer preview. And so there's opportunity to get that feedback in and kind of iterate on these things before they become stable.
All right. I've resorted to hacking the AI a bit because I can't figure out why the character's not drawing on the screen. So I was like, draw a red circle on the screen. And I just want to see where that coordinate is. I'm going to put the player there just to see if I can even get the player on the screen, because right now it's just like acting weird. Or maybe it's me just not knowing, but something ain't right. Something ain't right.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we do have about 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
it's probably a good time to start thinking about wrapping up.
I'm wrapped up. I'm over this. No, I would possible type of okay. Yeah, you know what? It'd be good to let people ask questions for the last few minutes, and then we should just answer questions, and then we can make the most of your and Doug's time. Yeah, and then I'm gonna remove my screen for now, and then I want to.
All right, here's a good question. For curiosity, is it impossible to type the providers array? I would say if we were going to design Angular's dependency injection system from scratch today, we would probably do it a little bit differently, and it would probably have a little bit more type safety. But ultimately, dependency injection is a system of somewhat loose coupling, right? It is separating the kind of injection site from the provider site. And so because there's kind of this inherent separation, and kind of the whole point of dependency injection, there's limitations to how strictly you can type a lot of this. And so it would probably be too breaking of a change to try to make the type checking any more strict than it is today. But you could probably have a theoretical dependency injection system that was a little bit more strict. Maybe not the most helpful answer, but that is probably the reality. Let's see, anything I missed? I'm just scrolling up through the various chats to see if I missed any.
I did see one question asking about micro front-end support, which I can chime in a little bit about. So we don't really have any plans for any more micro front-end support beyond what's already possible. Like it is, you can use Angular with micro front-ends through community builders and community solutions. Those are things that we do collaborate with them from time to time to make sure that we're meeting their needs and not breaking those issues. So we do have some level of support for that, but in general, we don't have any more official support for micro front ends. We're not really planning to change that. Angular does. I've actually been directly working on some micro front end stuff internally at Google because Google itself is running micro front ends. I actually did a conversation with Manfred Steyer last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, about micro front ends. So if you're interested to learn more about that, I'll try to find the link and share that in the chat. But yeah, so there's kind of like a lot of details there, but ultimately Angular itself is kind of generally broadly compatible with micro front ends. It's just about, plugging into the relevant tooling with, module federation or native federation or anything else that you're trying to connect that to. And Angular should mostly be compatible with that, but we don't really have plans for more official support beyond that.
All right. So there was there's some questions here that are a little bit specific to me. So I guess
go ahead and answer them. Answer.
Yeah. So I guess it's like we're close to wrapping up the stream. So yeah, I was gonna save this to the end, but yeah, I've decided to leave Google and move on to other opportunities and like get out of my comfort zone, try some new things. This is by no means any reflection of Angular, and in fact, part of why I feel good leaving is because the team now has so many kind of long time experienced engineers on the team. When I first came onto the team as the Uber TL, I think I was the most senior engineer on the team at the time, and at this point, there's so many people on the team who have so much experience and are such mature developers that I know that the framework is in phenomenal hands. And I am going to miss everybody on the team. They are phenomenal coworkers, some of the most talented engineers that I've had the pleasure to work with in a great organization inside of Google. And there's plenty of good stuff on the horizon. And I think there's some questions here I can kind of answer. So, which Angular version was like a milestone for me? And so, obviously, like version 2 was a big deal and was a culmination of a long time of work. I joined the team while V2 was kind of in early alpha, and so I was part of the like tail end of the building of Angular version 2. Version 5 was also very big for me because that was the first major release for Angular Material and Angular CDK, which was kind of like that. When I started on the team, I was the like TL for just the UI components, and so that was the first major release of those, and that was a really big milestone for me. Obviously, it's a little fuzzy because it's stretched out a couple of versions with different milestones, but we'll say I think version 13 was the like big post Ivy release. And so that was kind of the end of a kind of a long journey of Ivy, and getting to a place where it became much easier to iterate on the framework and start doing some of the exciting things that we've done over the past 3 or 4 years, like signals and control flow and a bunch of other things. And version 18 was also a really big one. Like we landed a lot of stuff in version 18, and the Angular team actually got like an award inside of Google. I have like a trophy somewhere, either like in this bookshelf back here or in my basement somewhere.
I have it. Is this one?
Oh yeah, you have it right there.
There you go. Honestly, I thought it was kind of cheap. It's got like cork on the bottom. I was a little disappointed, but it's the idea of the kids.
I love cork.
Sustainable. Thank you very much.
Sustainable. Okay, maybe.
But yeah, the team actually got an award inside of Google for how good the version 18 release was. And there was another question here. Oh, I missed it. Best moments. So yeah, I'm a little bit short of 14 years. It would have been 14 years in May, but I have been on the Angular team for 11. And I will say most of my best moments are around the people I got to work with. And so I remember, times when I have just gotten, team dinners, times we have all gotten together and just hung out and talked and solved problems. I have a particularly fond memory of a time that, a handful of us got together after the team was like relatively distributed. And we just put our heads down and worked on designing the signals integration for Angular. So like signal inputs and model and like signal computed effect, all of these things. We worked like heads down like for the entire day for like 10 days, I think, just like diving deep as we possibly could on all of this and trying to like figure out the whole like picture from like top to bottom. And that was both exhausting but really fulfilling because we were able to like figure out so much. And I'm really happy with the way all of that turned out. And obviously that's not that's not me doing all of that. It's a group of us all together, but it was in a very collaborative and productive environment that like Alex and Pavel and Andrew Scott and some other folks were involved in. And so yeah, thank you for joining Mark and I on these streams after all this time. Mark, are you going to keep the streams going? What's going to happen there?
It's a great question. Yes, we're going to keep it going because I feel like this has been one of the most excellent ways for me to really connect with the community. I got to know so many people. I, of course, have told you, I already cried. So friends at home, I've already cried in the meeting with Jeremy, telling him how much I've appreciated working with him. So that's already happened. I don't have to cry on the stream today, but it has been like a significant honor, to be honest with you, to like learn from Jeremy, to work on a team with him. But I have said this in meetings internally at Google and meetings externally, that these people that I work with now are the best people I've ever worked with. I've never had a better team than I have right now. So, Doug's included, Jeremy, Alex. I mean, you just rarely get to work with brilliant people who are also thoughtful and kind. And I repeat that because we all have worked with very smart people who are not both or either of those things. And so I get to work with these people. We're going to miss Jeremy on the stream, but we're going to keep the stream going. We're going to have more Doug on here. We'll have more people like Alex Rickabar, Pavel Kozlowski. We'll have more people on here. We'll have community members. Like I've been talking with Brandon from the community about having him on the stream. So it's going to be great. It will not be the same, but hopefully things are, it's like that. People move on and people find new challenges for themselves. And for Jeremy, we're all just wishing that wherever he goes, he's able to do the best work of his career and that he's happy and able to really make dreams come true for himself.
And, thank you, Mark. And with that, what are you reading, watching, playing?
I'm going to show you what I'm playing. Hold on. I'm going to show you what I'm playing right now. I'll show you right now what I'm playing. All right. I was while you all were answering questions, I got to zoom out. But I'm playing this.
Hey, you got a thing.
Yeah, the reason why is because the same thing that happened with the platforms, it's not doing a good job fixing the sprite like position. So now I know for the future, right? Like what to do. But so I was like, draw a black square, and then this is where my sprite is. So it's not in the right position, but it's there. So I'm playing this today. No, what am I playing? I'm doing the last levels of Astrobot. That game on PlayStation with my kid, with my son. I finished the game, which, as soon as you finish this game, they here are 15 more bots you can do, but you can only get them through time trials and the hardest challenges. That's right up my alley. So doing that. What am I reading? I'm reading a few books right now. I'm reading an AI book. I think the AI engineering book, because I just want to really understand. And then I'm reading a couple other books. I'm reading Harry Potter, the first one. My son likes it when I do the Hagrid voice that I've made up that is not his actual voice from the show. And my wife's like, Hagrid is not Scottish, but I'm like, Harry, what are you going to do there? And so it's so bad. Okay, it's so bad, but my son really likes it. He thinks it's funny that I do that. So I'm reading the first Harry Potter with my son, which is great. And what am I watching? I am watching The Pit, Fallout, and I always will watch Bob's Burgers, no matter what. So that's always. What about you, Doug? What are you watching, reading, and playing?
I don't really play. I don't read too much these days. Unfortunately, so I don't have anything to share there. I have been playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Finally got into that. In Act 2-ish right now. Been enjoying it so far. It seems pretty good. I think there's a lot to still work through there. It's nice to be able to just kind of sit on the couch with my partner and kind of enjoy it together a little bit, and enjoy the character design, the world design, and all that kind of stuff. So been enjoying that a lot. Watching, kind of falling off a little bit on shows. I think we were trying a little bit to get into The Sopranos. Never seen that before. So trying to see how well that works. I haven't gotten very far yet, but waiting for Fallout Season 2 to wrap up. I don't think it's quite done yet. And then once the season wraps up, we'll probably work through that. I haven't done that yet. That's where I am. What about you, Jeremy?
So for reading, I recently finished reading the first two books of the Hierarchy series. The first book is The Will of the Many, and the second book is Strength of the Few, and they are phenomenal. I cannot recommend these books enough. Some of the best fantasy that I have ever read. So definitely check that out. Watching mostly just Taskmaster and Dropout. Not watching a lot of TV lately, but except the occasional lightweight thing there. And then playing a lot of smaller games. Sectori, little arcade shooter, kind of like Geometry Wars. I dipping into that. And my fiance and I have been playing a few detective deduction games, and so we played through Seance at Blake Manor. Super fun kind of detective puzzle mystery game. We played a little indie game called Duck Detective that was, cute and fun. Takes maybe 2 hours tops to play. And also played through Dispatch, which I feel was kind of snubbed for Game of the Year consideration last year because it came out pretty late in the year.
Is that where you're the dispatch operator and it's superheroes?
Yeah. It's very lightweight on interactivity and gameplay. It's more of like an interactive TV show than anything else, but it is really well written, really well done. It is clearly directed by someone who is coming from or has like some background from like film and television, because like it is like it's animated, right? But I want to say like it's shot like a TV show, and it's just really funny and charming. Not kid friendly.
Okay, thank you for telling me that, because I was definitely like, oh, me and my kid can play this game.
No, not kid friendly, but definitely check that out.
But meaning to try all of those, like Seance at Blake Manor and Dispatch and all that. There's too many games to get through right now. Color Obscure is going to take me a while, and then there's going to be more that comes out. I feel like it's just
You know what, Doug? Declare bankruptcy like I have on video games. I just declare bankruptcy. So I just play games that I want to play. My backlog is non-existent. If it comes across my desk, I just play it now because I'll never get through all the games. But
I have a rule that I'm not allowed to. It doesn't matter if a game's on sale. If I'm not going to play it tomorrow, I cannot buy it.
I love that. I should take that into consideration, because I'm definitely getting out of control. But I will say this, friends, it's been an honor. Jeremy, thank you for Jeremy and Doug. I'm Mark from the Angular team, and no matter what you do, no matter what you choose, build something great, friends. We'll see you the next time. Cheers.